Be'ezras Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Sanhedrin, daf Samach Daled, number 64. Okay, we're going to begin here about I would say about, what is it, 9 lines from the bottom, 7, 8 lines from the bottom of daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis. So the Gemara is discussing over here regarding the idol worship that the Jews did during the first temple. And why did they do such a thing? Why did they get addicted to Avodah Zarah? Let's use our understanding of idol worship like a drug, and they got addicted to it. So, hi, Alan. We just began. So we're discussing over here why the Jews got addicted to Avodah Zarah during the first Beis Hamikdash. And we're using the term addicted because that's what the Gemara is going to use. It's like a drug addiction. So how did they get sucked into that? And that's the question. So, hi. Hi, Sheldon. We just began. Samach Gimel Amud Beis. So the Gemara says like this. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav said that during the first Beis Hamikdash, Yodin HaYisrael, the Jews knew ba'avodah zarah regarding idol worship, she'ein by mamish, that it doesn't do anything. So how we understand why they got into it? They only worshipped idols in order to have an excuse. The idols, so to speak, following that idol religion, you were allowed to do immorality. And this allowed them to do immorality, which the Jewish law is so restrictive. So by working with the idols and thinking there's a power there, you were allowed to, it gave a license to do immorality. Bifarhasia means without any conscience. So Masav Ramesharshi asked a question on that. If that's the reason why the Jews were serving idols, it's Gizkar B'neihem Mizbechaisam. Just like a person who remembers a lost child, the Yirmiyahu is saying that the Jews were remembering their altars that they erected on behalf of the idols. It seems, V'amar Rabbi Elazar says, Ka'adam sheyesh gaguin, just like a person who has longings al benoi on his son that he misses so much. So they had a longing missing the Avodah Zarah that they did. So it seems to be that there was an equality, that they were attracted to the Avodah Zarah for the sake of the Avodah Zarah. And says the Gemara, B'basa the avikebe. That means after they became addicted to the Avodah Zarah. In other words, to get into the Avodah Zarah, they used the excuse is that it allowed immorality. But once you started with the Avodah Zarah, there was an addiction to it, and therefore it was hard to separate from that. And that's how we understand how the Jews got into this. Tashma coming here, there's a pasuk. It says, "V'nesati pigrechem al pigrei glulechem." The Gemara says that the pasuk says by the curses of the Jewish people, what's going to happen? The punishments that your corpses are going to fall over dead corpses. In other words, people are going to die over dead corpses, like lahavdil, what happened in the Holocaust. And here the Gemara tells like a liberation Holocaust story. Omar, they told over the story like this. Chazal are telling the story. Eliyahu HaTzadik, it's another name for Eliyahu HaNavi. Al Tapuchi Ra'av Shebi Yerushalayim. He was looking at the people who were bloated in hunger in Jerusalem. You know, during the sieges and during the surviving after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Eliyahu Navi was a liberator, trying to help somebody who's suffering from hunger. Pamachas, one time, Motzatinik Shoyetapuach, he saw a child that's bloated. Umuto ba'ashba, we've seen pictures of that, and hanging around the garbage. Amalai, so Eliyahu Navi asked the child, Me'eza mishpacha ata, from what family are you from? Amalai, he said, Mi mishpacha pleinis ani, I am from such and such family. Amalai, klum nishtayim oisa mishpacha. So Eliyahu Navi asked him, did anybody survive from your family? Amalai lav, he said, nobody survived. Chutz mimeni, I'm the last one in my family. Amalai, so Eliyahu Navi said, Im ani melamedcha davar she'ata chai bo ata lamed. If I teach you something that will help you survive, would you learn it from me? In other words, I'm going to teach you something that will help you live despite your hunger. Amalai, hey, and I'm ready to take anything. Amalai, so Eliyahu Navi taught him, Ema b'chol yom, say the following every day, except Ol Malchus Shemayim, the sovereignty of heaven. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. If you say that, you'll be able to survive this hunger. Amalai, so the child answered back to Eliyahu Navi. We go to the top of Samach Dalid. Has, Eliyahu Navi, you be quiet. Shaloi lahaske b'shem Hashem. I was taught not to mention the name Yudke Vavke, God's name, because that's a Shalolimde Avavi Imoy. I was taught, my parents taught me that not to mention that name. In other words, that's not a God. Miyad, so what is a God? So the kid, this child, Haitzi, this starving child, Haitzi Yerasai Mecheka, he took out like a pocket Avodah Zarah, pocket idol, Umechabaka, and he would hug it, Umenashke, and kiss it, and but he still had no food. Achenifka Kresa, his intestines or his stomach split open. V'nafla Yerasai La'aretz, and his body fell to the ground. V'nafal hu Aleha, and he fell on top of it. So part of him died, and then he followed suit. So L'kayim Mashanema, the pasuk says, "V'nasi pigrechem," your bodies will fall al pigre glulechem, on what you defecated, what came out of your insides. Then your body will fall on that and die upon that. So the question the Gemara asks, so we see that even a child who really how did he get addicted to Avodah Zarah? He had no immorality. Let's say he was a 7-year-old child. He didn't start the Avodah Zarah addiction by looking for a way to permit immorality, and yet we see that the children, the 6-year-old, 7-year-old children, were addicted to Avodah Zarah. So it must have been it had an addictive quality for itself, an attraction. And says the Gemara, Bosa da Avikibe. It's after they became addicted to it. In other words, what the Gemara is saying is that the parents who did immorality and then got addicted to this Avodah Zarah, and they gave birth to children who were born with the natural addiction to Avodah Zarah. How the influence of the parents could have on the child, even though the child, had no interest in immorality. Toshma coming here. The Gemara is now discussing a pasuk in Nehemiah, that during the time of the building of the second Beis Hamikdash, let's say the second Beis Hamikdash, they tried, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the people who wrote the Shemoneh Esrei, tried to destroy this, they asked God to destroy the addiction to Avodah Zarah. They all started to pray so hard to their God. My Omar, what did they say to God? Omar Rabbi Yehuda v'Item Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Yonasan, Beya Beya. In other words, they were saying, "Oh God, this is terrible." Basically, Beya Beya is they was crying. Oy oy vey. Hainu, this addiction, this drug. Let's call it this Avodah Zarah addiction. Hainu the achra lebesa, that destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. V'kalia lehechel, destroyed the temple. The Katline Litzadikein, and killed all the righteous people. V'aglini Yisrael Ma'are, and threw the Jewish people out of Eretz Yisrael. V'adayin, and we're building the second temple, and V'adayin Humaraka Beinan, we see it's still dancing amongst us. Kulum, in other words, they're afraid that they're going to build the second temple, and it's going to be all for naught, because the Jews are going to take back the addiction of Avodah Zarah, and it's going to bring about the destruction of the second temple. So the Anshe Knesset Gedolah told God, "Klum yahavtelon el kabure be'igra." The whole purpose of having this test of Avodah Zarah is so that we can get reward. We're challenged by this addiction. So loy be'iyu beininem v'loy agre be'inem. We don't want the challenge of Avodah Zarah, and we don't want the reward for overcoming the challenge and overcoming that temptation. So we see that again, the Gemara is trying to push it, that there was an attractive quality for Avodah Zarah for itself, without any other reason why the Jews did Avodah Zarah. It's just something within the Avodah Zarah itself. And it's the Gemara, same idea. Really, Avodah Zarah has no attraction. And Jews intuitively know that. But they got involved into Avodah Zarah because they said, I'm going to do it in order to do immorality. Once they started the immorality and they started doing Avodah Zarah, that's when the addiction kicked in. So what did we're finishing the Brisa. So how did the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, why during the time of the second base of Mikdash sort of it disappeared, this attraction to do Avodah Zarah? So Yasru Tlayisu Yama Batanise. They sat for 3 days in fast, that Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Bayirachme, they prayed. Nafal Blu Piske Merikia, a note fell from heaven, the Hava Kasiv Be Emes, that it said in it truth. And it's basically God agreeing that it's a good idea to get rid of the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Amar Rab Chanina, so Rab Chanina said, Shma Mina, from here we see, Chaysama Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Emes. Whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives signs in executive order, he signs it lahavdil, like our president, lahavdil, Emes. He signs it, my name is truth. So again, God agreed to this executive order and put it that we're going to destroy the Avodah Zarah, the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah, which doesn't exist, which technically should not exist today. Nafik Gurya Denura Mibeis Kache Kadashim, a fire lion, young lion, came out of the Kache Kadashim from the second temple. Somehow this fiery lion came out, and that was the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Amalahu Navali Yisrael. So Navi said to the Yisrael, I think it was Zechariah, Hani Yitzra Avodah Zarah. That's the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Bahadi de Kafstafsele, as they grabbed it, Ishtamute Bine Simene. They grabbed it, a little hair dislodged itself. Somehow a hair came off. They pulled him by its tail, maybe, and hair came off. Va'azal Kale Ba'arba Me Pas. It started to scream 100 miles. Amro, so they were concerned. Hey Chanavid, how are we going to capture this Avodah Zarah? Dilma Mishamayim Arachme Alei. Maybe in heaven, when they hear the Yetzer Hara is going to be caught and trapped and put away, they're going to, in heaven, God's going to have Rahmanas on it, this Malach of the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. Amalu Neonavi, so the Neonavi said, Shaduya Bidudi da Avara, put him in and put this Yetzer Hara into a container of lead, the chasuhu ba'avar, and cover it with lead. So now it's trapped into this lead container, the shav kali, that it muffles the sound coming out of it. And I don't know. So therefore, even if it's going to scream, God's not going to hear it. I don't know what this means, but the ksiv, this is what the Navi said. Zoy Sarisha, this Yetzer Hara, v'yashlich oisa elo efa, they put it into this ephah, this jug, and they put a lead stone on the mouth of the jug. So basically, they got rid of, the Anshe Knesset Gedolah were successful ridding themselves of the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. So Omri, they said, Hoyel ve'eis ratzin, who now it's a time of mercy, divine mercy. God is willing to rid itself of the Yetzer Hara, the temptations of the world. So they thought, let's pray that God should take away the Yetzer Hara of cohabitation, the Yetzer Hara of immorality. So then they prayed, and exactly, people's desires for cohabitation was removed. So they trapped this Yetzer Hara of cohabitation for 3 days. But nobody, there was no cohabitation, not amongst people, and not amongst animals, and not amongst chickens. And therefore, they were trying to, there was a person that was sick, they were trying to find a fresh egg, and they couldn't find one. So they realized they have to bring back this Yetzer Hara of cohabitation. We need the eggs and the sperm to fertilize in order to keep civilization going. Amru, so they said, Hey Chanav, what should we do? Niboya palga, let's ask God to remove half the Yetzer Hara of immorality. So the Gemara says, "Pal Gemarki lo Yahavi." They would not answer you halfway. God, when you request something from Him, He answers you 100%. Either He's going to do it 100% or not do it at all. So what they did with this Yetzer Hara was kachlinu le'eni. They blinded the eye of the Yetzer Hara of cohabitation. Ahanebe, it helped. A person's not incited to cohabitate with his relative. After that, somehow incest is not common because a person's not going to do it with his sister or his mother, etc. But maybe before that, Anshe Knesset Gedolah, in previous times, there was some sort of an attraction to a close relative. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Maasa b'goy achash ha'yisachayla b'yosed. It was a very sick goita. Amra, she said, Im tamed isha mechali yotelech v'saved l'chol avodah zarah sheba'olam. She said, if I get healthy, I'm going to serve. My bucket list will be to serve every idol in the world. Amda l'chol avodah zarah sheba'olam. She served every idol in the world. When she reached to do the Baal Pa'ar, remember the Baal Pa'ar was you defecate in front of it. She wanted to, keep her word and serve every idol in the world. So the priest told her, the way to serve this idol is Eichel Trodin. You eat beets, the Soishin Secher, and you drink beer. It's sort of like before you go to a colonoscopy. So therefore, umasrizim ifnah, and you defecate in front of this avodah zarah. Amra, so she said, I can't do that. I can't do that. I'd rather go back being sick again and not to serve this avodah zarah. So that was what the Goita said. She wasn't going to serve this avodah zarah. It's so disgusting. But the pasuk says, Atem Beis Yisrael, you Jews are not that way. You are connected to Baal Pa'ar like the lid of a jar on a pickle juice. It's so stuck. We became so addicted to Baal Pa'ar. But when it comes to being addicted to God, when we want a better level, you are just clinging to God. Like two dates that are connected one to another. You could easily peel them apart. When something is secured on, like nitzmid, it's much harder to break away. So somehow it's like it's expressing the way Jews are. When we get into Avodah Zarah, we'll get more connected to Avodah Zarah than we ever were connected to God, so to speak. That's the way Rav Yehuda Amar Rav explained, and therefore he was speaking in a negative way towards the Jewish people. But by Masnitaton, the Brisa used to have it this different way, that the word nitzmodim, the palpar, nitzmodim is not an addiction, but it's kitzomid al yisha, like a bracelet on a woman. It's there, it's stuck, and it's connected, but it's not, it's not glued on. But when it came to when the Jews are connected to God, is devuke mamish, that we're glued together. So it seems that when we're connected to God, we're more connected to God than we ever were connected to Avodah Zarah. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Maasa b'Sambta ben Alas, Sheskira Chamar legoyer achas. This person named Sambta, and he came from Ben Alas, and he was a taxi driver, and he was hired by a guy, a shiksa, to drive her around in his donkey. Kivan shegi lepar, when they got to Lepar, Amrlai, she's told her driver, the Jewish driver whose name was Sapta, Hamtin ache kanas, I'm going into this par, I'm going to do what I need to do. After she went out, Amallah, so he said, wait for me, I'm going in to do the same thing for Baal Pa'ar. Amrlai, she said, aren't you a Jew? A Jew doesn't serve the Baal Pa'ar. Amallah, he told her, what bothers you? I want to serve also a Baal Pa'ar. Nichnas par b'fonav, he went inside to the temple there. He defecated in front of the idol. V'kinach b'chaytmai, and he wiped its nose with his feces. And the priests of the Baal Pa'ar were praising. They would say, there was nobody who ever served the Baal Pa'ar this way. Apparently, this Jew went above and beyond what they would normally serve this Baal Pa'ar. So somehow the Gemara is describing that when Jews get into these avodah zaras, they become so connected that they're more dedicated to the avodah zara even more than the goyim. Apoya atzmoy lebalpar. The Gemara says if you defecate to the balpar, hareze avodah zara. That's the way you serve it. Avagav the mekaven lebizui. Even if you think it's a disgusting way to serve an idol, but that's the way they serve it, so you're going to be held liable. It doesn't matter what you think. If that's the way they serve it, and you're serving it that way, even if you think it's embarrassing, it's a degradation, you get the avera. Hazarik Evan Lamalkulis, Zuhi Avaidasai, Afagav the Mekavel. If you throw a stone to the Markulis, that's the way they serve it. Even though if you're thinking that to yourself, what a way to serve an idol, just throw a stone at it. And so it doesn't matter what you think, but that's the truth. The truth is that's the way it's served. Rav Menashe have a cause of the Beit Terusa. Rav Menashe was going to Beit Terusa as a place. Amr Lai, they said, Avodah Zara hu dekai hachet. There's a markulis avodah zara that you're passing on the road. So he wanted to show like a kanoi to throw something. Shakal pisa shadabe. He took a clump of earth and threw it at the markulis. Amr Lai, so they told him markulisi, but it's a markulis. Amr lehu, so he said hazorik even li markulis. There's not. I was thinking to myself that that this is a degrading thing, and the Mishnah says if you throw a stone on behalf to show respect to the margolis, that's when you're liable. So, but he wasn't sure if he did the right thing. Should he have not done it? Also, Shaul Beit Midrash, he went to the Beis Medrash. Omalei, they told him Hazorik Ervin Bir Markolis. If you throw a stone towards the markolis, that's what it says in the Mishnah. Even if you're thinking that you are going to stone the markolis, you're angry at it, it's still not a good thing to do. Just stay away. Don't do anything. And no matter if you're dealing with an avodah zara. Amalei, so he was nervous. Azal ishkale, should I take the stone back? Amalei, if whoever throws a stone at the markulis or whoever takes away a stone is also held accountable. So don't do anything. Why is somebody taking away a stone held accountable? Because kol chad v'chad ravcha lechaver tishavet. Whenever you remove a stone, you're leaving place for your friend to throw a stone. It's like when they take out the kvitlach from the kaisel lahavdal. So now you give place for somebody else to put a kvitl in the kaisel. So when you take away a stone from the markulis, that's also respecting the markulis, allowing other people place to throw a stone at the markulis. So therefore, they told him not to do it. Says the Mishnah, someone who gives his way, one of his children for the moilech. Let's imagine the moilech was an avodah zara, but there was a fire on both sides and like a stone pathway, and you had to walk your child through that pathway of fire to get to the moilech, the avodah zara, on the other end. So what a person who would give his child over for the moilech, you're not chayiv until actually you pass your child to the priest, and the priest hands you back your child, and then you walk the child, I guess, through the two fires towards the avodah zara. I guess that was to scare the child, or show you're ready to give up the child for the sake of the avodah zara. V'yava be'esh, and bring him through the fire. Let's say you gave it over to the priest, but the father did not walk the child through the fire. You walked through the fire, but you didn't give it to the priest first. You're not held liable until you give it over to the priests, and then they hand the child back to you, and then you walk the child through the fire. Only then you're held liable for this moilech. Now, is the moilech an avodah zara, or was this like a symbol of something? So Ketani avodah zara, Ketani moilech. Our previous Mishnah said if you serve avodah zara, you get skila, and now the Mishnah says if you do the moilech, you get skila. So is it the same? Is it one of the same? Because then you don't have to single out the moilech avodah zara. It should be included that anytime you serve an avodah zara, you're held liable. Amar Abavan Tanan Kamandi Amar. Our Mishnah goes according to Mandi Amar. Moilech la avodah zara. It's not an avodah zara. So it's just one of those things of like chukas hagoyim that the Torah didn't want you to do. It's not really such an avodah zarah. It's just doing what goyim do, and that's what the Torah was concerned about. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, if you bring yourself through the fire, through to the moilach, or you bring yourself through any other avodah zarah, you bring yourself through fire, you're held liable for serving an idol. Even if it's not the normal way to serve this idol, to go through fire for it, you're held liable, because going through fire is one of those things singled out by the Torah as something you get skila for. If you go to the moilech, you're held liable, but not for the moilech, you're not held liable. So Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon held that moilech was just the chukas hagoyim specifically for this moilech thing, but moilech wasn't really an avodah zarah. It was just something of a goyim used to do that the Torah was concerned that you shouldn't do it. Amar Abaya, Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon, Reb Chanina ben Atignas, Amru Dover Echad. Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon had Amar. Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon says that the moilech was not an avodah zarah. Rabbi Chanina ben Atignas said the same idea. The Tanya Rabbi Chanina ben Atignas, why did the Torah say it's bringing through? Kol shem licha aleichem. It doesn't matter what the moilech was. It could have been a statue that you bring yourself through the fire towards the statue. Even if you put a little rock at the end of the pathway of fire, or a little twig, that became the moilech. So moilech was just not an avodah zarah. It was just a symbol that you're ready to walk through fire. So we see that Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Lazar and Shimon say exactly the same thing, that moilech was not really an avodah zarah. But Rava says, but there is a difference between them. Moilech arai ika benayu. Rabbi Lazar and Shimon holds that only if you're going through the fire towards it like a permanent statue, like say, then you're held liable for this moilech. Rava says that even if you, Rabbi Chanina ben Atignas seems to say that even if they don't have a permanent statue there, they put up something that will represent the goal line, so to speak, even a piece of twig. You're just walking through fire towards that piece of twig, you're going to held liable. But Rabbi Lazar ben Shimon says no, it has to be a permanent fixture at the end of the fire, at the end of the pathway towards the fire, and only then you're held liable. We go to Amud Beis. We'll stop in like 2 more minutes. Rabbi Yanai said, you're not held liable for the moilech until you give your child over to the priest. From your children, you didn't give it over to the priest. So you first give your child to the priest, he hands it back to you, and then, I don't know, you bring the child through the fire. This is the way we said. If you just gave it to the priest and you didn't, and if you walked it through the fire, but you didn't give it over to the priest, I would think you're held liable. It says loisite, don't give your child to the priest. But let's say you gave it to the priest, but you didn't take back the child to bring him through the fire. I would think you're going to held liable. You also have to bring it through the fire. Maybe I would think that if you brought it not to the moilech, you had another avodah zarah and you made a fire and you just you walked through the fire towards the avodah zarah, I would think you'll be held liable. It has to be towards the moilech avodah zarah. But let's say you actually walked towards it, you gave it to the priest handed it back to you, and you walked through a pathway towards the moilech, but there was no fire there. I would think you're going to be chayev. Talmud Loim, the pasuk says, "Nema kan lahavir." So we see that it has to be a fire there. It's not just walking towards this moilech god, but it has to be walking through fire on each side of you that makes you liable. One more thing, and then we'll end. Let's say a person has one kid, and that's all he has, and he brings him through to the moilech. I would think you're not held liable, because the Torah tells you have to just bring one child through and not all your children. So if all your children, you grab them all at once and you bring them through the moilech, you're not considered held accountable. Now, when you're walking your kid through to the moilech, again, you're walking down the pathway with fire on each side toward this moilech, toward this whatever statue, Heve suma mao. Let's say you're bringing your child and he's blind, so he can't walk by himself. Yoshimao. Or let's say your kid was sleeping. Ben benoi ben bitoi mahu. Let's say you bring your grandkid. Are you held liable? If you learned in the Brisa, ki mizari nosel amoylech, matam aloymel, if you stem liitzim chol mavi boy b'diti ba'esh, ainli ela b'noi bite, ben b'noi ben bite menayin. Since the Torah uses it mizarai, anybody who has your genes, don't give it to the moylech. Tamad loymer sitem mizarai. Once you gave your somebody from your genes towards the moylech, you're held liable. So that question we answered. That if someone brings his grandkid towards the moylech and does the moylech, he's held liable. So the Gemara just asked one final question. Tana pasa b'ki mizare v'sol b'site mizare. The Tana ended off the brisa that's saying b'site mizare melamoylech. What does that teach you? It's different than ki mizare nasan lamoylech. So the answer is zare darsha chinehu. That teaches you something, another idea. Let's say a guy is married to a mamzeres, and the child is a mamzer. So and he does that to the moylech. Are you held liable? Zare, if it just said your child, ein li'ela zera kosher, it has to be a kosher child. Zera posam. Let's say you had a mamzer as a kid, and you're bringing him through the moylech. How do you know you're held liable? Any one of your children, from any one of your children, even if it's not considered your child because he's a pasula, you're still going to be held liable. Okay, we're going to continue tomorrow, Be'ezras Hashem, regarding the topic of moylech.
Thank